Hi everyone, my name is Kenneth Bruni and welcome back to the channel. So in this video we are going to build a desktop application and we are basically going to learn some few things and how we apply some of the basic concepts we have with Python programming. So this is going to be a preview of the application. So we have our app and I'm going to say so I have this welcome to Cambridge Tech. Now I'm going to keep quiet and I'm going to click on the speak button and we are going to hear this text being converted to speech.
Welcome to Cambridge Tech.
So now that we have the preview, let's look at exactly what we are going to do. We are going to use some few libraries and the main one we are going to discuss is this one we have over here, PySimpleGUI. I'll leave the link to this website in the description below and you can definitely spend time to look at to read documentations actually, but then I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing. I'm just going to show you how we go about this. So first of all, we need to download this so we can do a pip install PySimpleGUI. And I'll just open up my VS Code environment and I'm going to create my application. So I'm going to call this app.py. So I have this showing up over here. Let me just collapse this and we are going to run this over here. So let me just open up this terminal a little bit and it's going to be simple pip install PySimpleGUI. All right, so definitely I would have to press enter for the installation to go through, but then I already have it installed, so I wouldn't have to bother doing that again. And we are going to work with this. So the first thing that we are going to do is to understand some basic concepts, and that is why I have this website over here, that's apps.diagrams, which we are going to have some few diagrams showing up over here. So basically, whenever we are creating a GUI application, especially with PySimpleGUI, what the library gives us is more or less a blank canvas this way, and then we start placing the very things we want to put up over here. So in here we can, for instance, add in some text on our application. We can, for instance, and let me just use this to represent an input field. So let's say we can have an input field over here and we decide exactly how we place some of these components, or you can choose to call them widgets. And let's say I can also have something like this, which I'm going to use this to represent a button. So let me just call this something like save. So like I said, PySimpleGUI is going to give us this blank canvas, and based on how ever we want application to look, we are going to position these widgets on, and at the end of the day we are going to write some code to implement the things you saw me do. So now that we have that out of the way, let's try and work our way through. So first of all, I'm going to import PySimpleGUI, and this is very simple. So I'll say import PySimpleGUI as SG. And over here, I'm using an alias over here because I don't want to be typing PySimpleGUI all the time. So instead of typing PySimpleGUI, I can say SG. And now what I can now do, SG dot, there's a window class over here, and I'll instantiate this way. And over here, we get this lookup. We have a lot of help, and there are lots of parameters we can pass over here. But then we are basically going to look at the very important ones. Okay. Now the first one we are going to look at is the title. The title is basically going to be the title of our application, and that's going to show at the very top. So if I can go back, the title is going to show somewhere at the very top over here. So with that out of the way, let's see this title. Let me call this talk app. Okay, so talk app is going to be the title over there, and now we'll need a layout. So I'm going to say layout is going to be equal to, and I'm going to say layout. So the big question is, what is our layout? How is it going to look like? Well, the layout is basically going to start off with a blank canvas, and then we are going to put things in there. So the layout is going to be a list of lists. So we are going to have the first bracket showing up over here, which is the outer bracket. And in here, we are going to put the various components over here. So the first component I would want to put is this text, okay? And I would want to have maybe something over here. So I can bring out this list over here, and then I'll do sg.text. And of course, I need to provide a string over here. So this string is more or less going to be the label. And over here, I'm just going to say something like, let's say name. So now when I save this layout is now being picked from this. And let me run this. At least it's not going to work yet. We need to do something else. And what we need to do is, yes, we have created some kind of a window, but we have to make it visible. And the only way we make it visible over here is to apply a read method on this. So that this read method is basically going to pick up this window that we are creating from PySimpleGUI with this title and also this specific layout, which is basically just going to give us this text. So I'll save this, and now when I run this, at least we have something. Clearly you could see that we have this interface and we are beginning to see things over here. So now everything is looking good. So now let's rather move straight into how we really want things to look like. So now that we have this, at least we have this text showing up over here. Let's see, okay, the next thing maybe we want to do is to have, for instance, this input button or this input field over here. So to get the input field, I want it next to the text field, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a comma over here, and I'm going to do sg dot, and I can have access to the input class over here. So I'll do this, and just about now, when I run this, we clearly see that now we have an input field next to the text field. So I can start typing whatever thing I want over here. Okay. So far, so good. Let's see how we manipulate things. So the big question is, okay, what about if you want to have a button? Okay, if you want to have a button, and for instance, if you want the button next to the input field, then we can also do a comma over here, and for instance, do sg button. And inside of this, we need to pass in some kind of a label for the button. So over here, I can say save. Now, when I save this and run this, we get exactly how we have laid things out over here. So you clearly could see that everything in this inner bracket, as we have it over here, this particular list will be laid out in that particular order. So first of all, we had, let me just put this right under this. First of all, we had a text, which was name. We had the input field over here, which is this input field, and we are having the button next to it. If you want, for instance, maybe another button beneath this, then I'll do a comma, because like I said, it's a list of lists. So I'll have another list over here, and I'll do sg dot, for instance, this button. And let me just call this new button. So now when I run this, clearly you can see that the layout is showing up exactly how things have been put out in the layout as far as our widget is concerned. So everything is looking good. But now there are some few issues we are going to work our way around. Now, if I click on any of the buttons, my application stops. Let me run this once again. When I click on this new button, the application stops. And that's because we haven't done certain things right. So let me just shrink this a little bit down so that we have a much wider slit at the top. So in order to get this working, we need to restructure our code. So first of all, let me just create a window. So I'm saying that window is equal to this, and now I'm going to take the read method out of this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a while loop over here. So while true, and if you have watched my videos on the Python programming, you will definitely understand that this while loop, if we are using while true, it is going to run an infinite loop. So we want to have our window running infinite. So I can do window dot read over here, and this is basically going to make our window run forever. So now when I save this and now press this button to execute our program, when I click on this, it doesn't close, and it's not closing because of the while loop I've created out over here. And all that we have in this while loop is under this while loop, we are running this window and nothing has been done otherwise. But now there's also a problem over here. Now when I click on this button, we get some few things showing up over here, and it says that you have tried 100 times to read a closed window. You have to add a check for events is equal to win underscore close. So now when I click on kill application, it gives me this funny killing up by over here. So there are basically some few things we need to understand moving on, and that's basically what we have over here. So for every layout, for every window that we have, there are basically two things that we can get out of the window, and they are basically events and values. So the events are nothing but for instance, the things we can trigger. So for instance, this is a button. When I click on this button, that's an event, and the values are going to be things I can put in there. So for instance, whatever thing I can put inside of this input field is going to be some value, and we get that from the window, as you saw me illustrate. So we can get an event and the values from the window. So over here I'm going to say event comma values, we are decomposing it, is equal to window.read over here. And now this is what I want to do. I would want to say if the event is equal to sg dot, you saw the win close over there, then I would want to break out of this loop. And then finally I'm going to come out of this while loop and I'm going to say window dot close over here. And this is basically just going to check that everything has closed. So now I'll save this, and if I run this, clearly we have our interface back. When I click on this, nothing shows up yet, but then when I click on this, we don't have what we saw earlier on. So everything is looking good, and now let's make progress. So now that we have this, you could clearly see that we have our events, and we can target an event using the if statement to do some few things. So the next thing I would want to do is, for instance, target this save button. So now I can come in here and say that if the event is going to be equal to, and I'm using the double equal to because that's the comparator operator. If it is going to be equal to save, then what do I do? For starters, let's just say I would want to print out something over here. So I would want to say clicked, just like this. And let me just open up my terminal a little bit. So now let's run this application. And based on the logic we have so far, we are saying that if the event is equal to save, then I would want to execute this print click over here. And that's exactly what's going to show in the terminal. So now when I click on this, we get this clicked. As many times as I click on it, it's going to show up over here. So we get a sense of how things are going to move going on. Now, one of the few things we also need to discuss is many a times we can have two or more buttons on our window performing the same functionality. And sometimes we need to be very careful, because if they have the same name, then it's going to cause a problem. If they have the same logic, it is also going to cause a problem. So what we normally do is to rather use keys to identify buttons. So now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pass in a comma over here, and I'm going to pass in an attribute called key. And this is also going to be a string. So over here, I'm going to call this save underscore btn. You can choose any name, but then these are the things I use for the names over here. Now that I have this key that is going to reference this button, which is going to have the label save. Now currently, if I run this program and I click on this, I'm supposed to be seeing clicked being printed out in the terminal, but then I don't see clicked. The reason I don't see clicked is simply because of the fact that I now have a key. And in order to write the logic for this to work, I need to access or check the event by the key. So now I'll do a control V over here. Now I've brought in the key, and now when I run this and click on this save button, now everything is back working perfectly. And that's exactly what we are going to use moving on. And we can do a number of things over here. So over here with the input field, I can also put in a key over here so that we can actually target something from the input field. And before we do so, let me just show you this. So I've spoken about the events, and you've seen how we can target an event and maybe perform some logic over here. Now, what about the values? Remember I said something, that the values are what we are going to input into our program. So for instance, the input field is going to accept some values. And that's exactly what we have over here. So what I'm going to do is, okay, if this button is clicked, instead of printing out clicked, I would want to print out the values that I have on my interface. So I'll run this, and remember, it is this save button that we are working with. So now when I click on this, it is giving me, and if you are very observant over here, you see that this is a dictionary, and this dictionary is basically a key value pair. So it has a key of 0, and the value is what you see as an empty string over here. Now let me type in something, and this time around I'm going to type in my name, Kenneth. And when I click on this save button again, clearly I see that I have this key as 0, but now the value I have over here is this strange Kenneth that I typed over here. So clearly the logic we have is able to access some values for us. And let me just close this and do something interesting over here. So in addition to this, let me just have another one over here, and I'm going to say sg.input, and then I'm also going to have this input field over here. So clearly now we have 2 input fields. So when I run this, we have 2 input fields over here. So basically this save button, when I click on this save button, I'm supposed to get the values, and these values is going to be the values of everything I have over here. So currently I have 2 input fields showing up over here. Let me just put this one here, and let me have this save button here. So this is what I have. So I have 2 input fields, so it is going to pick up values from those fields for me. So currently, let me just show you. If I come back here and click on this save, now I have a dictionary. Initially it was just 1 key and then 1 value. Now I have 2 keys over here because I have 0 and then I also have 1, and both of them are empty. Now if I type in Ken over here and click on this, now I have the first key value pair having a key of 0 and a value of Ken. And currently you can see that this one is empty, so that's why you don't see anything over here. If I'm to type in my surname Bruni over here and click on save, you could clearly see that I have Ken and then Bruni over here. So we can see that everything is being filled out as far as the values are concerned. Now we can also put in some keys over here in order to target some specific values from our input field, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say key is going to be equal to, and over here I'm going to say, let me call this first, and let me have another key over here, and I'm going to call this second. So something interesting is going to happen, and it's very good, especially with everything we are dealing with. So now when I run this and we get back to here, when I click on this, now you can see that the keys has now changed from 0, 1 to now first and second. And that's basically the keys we have explicitly provided over here. And that's what we want. So now if I pass in Ken over here, and let's say I pass in Brony over here, and click on this button, I see that the key is first, as I have indicated over here, and the value is Ken, as I have also inputted over here. And we see same for second as a key over here, and also the value I have put in over here as Brony. So far so good, everything is looking okay. So what we are going to concentrate on now is at least we have an idea of how things are going to pan out. So we are actually going to build our program. Now, in order to build our program, let me just take off some of the things we don't need over here. So we don't need this, and I'm going to say, or I'm going to change this to speak. And then we also don't need this text at the beginning. And I think that's just about it. And let me just change this to speak BTN. So I'm going to call this speak BTN. And let me also change this to speak BTN. And let me call this input for the key. All right, so we can basically look at this layout and see how things are going to pan out. So we are going to have an input field, and next to it is going to be a button with the inscription speak, and we just want to target the key over here. So now when I run this is exactly what we want, and this is exactly how we are going to work. So now when I click on this, we are still getting this input and nothing over here. If I type in something like my name is Ken, and click on speak, we get to see that yes, the key is input, and the value we have over here is exactly what we have in here, and that's my name is Ken. So we are going to build on this, and if your guess is as good as mine, we can basically do some manipulation over here. So in here, when I do print values, I'm getting all the values over here. But then basically I can actually target and get items by the key, because this is a dictionary, so I can grab the value by the key. And this is what I mean. I can do the slicing over here, and then I bring in the string and pass in the key over here. So now when I do this is not just going to print out the entire dictionary, but then just whatever thing I put in over there. That's the value. So now if I type in Ghana and click on speak, we only see Ghana over here. And if I say Ghana is my home country, and I click on this, now we get to see Ghana is my home country. So basically this is the value, or this is the data we are going to pass in the Python text to speech for us to get the audio sound. So I'm going to close this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this in a variable called data. So data is going to be equal to this. And now what do I want? I want to now use the Python text to speech. And I'll highly recommend you watch 2 videos that I have that basically works with the Python text to speech, because this time around we are just going to utilize that particular library, and I also have it installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have import Python text to speech 3. So the library is pyttsx3, and what I'm going to do is right on top of this, I'm going to instantiate this. So I'm going to say speaker is going to be equal to Python text to speech 3.init this way. And now I can now do speaker.say and pass in whatever data I have over here. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say the speaker object I just created out there .say, and I'll pass in the data over here. That's basically going to come out from the dictionary. And now I can do speaker dot run and wait and call this method over here. That's just about it. So clearly you could see that we have about 19 lines of code with some spaces over here. So if we are to collapse all the spaces, definitely we are going to get less lines of code. So now let's run this application and see if everything works perfectly for us. So we have our app, and I'm going to say so I have this welcome to Cambridge Tech. Now I'm going to keep quiet and I'm going to click on the speak button, and we are going to hear this text being converted to speech.
Welcome to Cambridge Tech.
All right, so let me add a little bit more. I'm excited about this project. Okay.
Welcome to Cambridge Tech. I am excited about this project.
All right, so I think everything is looking good, and this is going to be the end of the first session of the video. In the next session, we are going to look at how we build the QR code application using PySimpleGUI and also the QR code library. Now, if you found value in the content that I'm making, I'll kindly need your support. Kindly subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit on the notification button so that anytime I release a video, you'll be duly notified. Also, share this video with friends and family who find this content very useful. At Cambridge Tech, we say learn programming. You can do it. Bye bye, and catch you in the next video.